They called him the Motor City Cobra. Fast, ruthless, unforgettable. For decades, Thomas Hearns left legends flat on the canvas and crowds standing on their feet in awe. But now, at 66, the fight is no longer inside the ring. It's in his memories, in the toll that years of brutal battles have left on his mind and body. And when Hearns finally admitted the one opponent who truly broke him, the answer shocked the world. Because it wasn't the man everyone expected. But before we reveal that name, let's rewind the clock and relive the incredible journey of the Hitman, one of boxing's most electrifying champions. Thomas Hearns was born in 1958 in Grand Junction, Tennessee. But at just 5 years old, his family packed up and moved to Detroit, Michigan. It was here, in one of America's toughest cities, that Hearns would find his true identity. Detroit wasn't a place for the weak. You had to stand tall, fight for respect, and carve your own way. For young Thomas, that meant boxing. Inspired by Muhammad Ali, Hearns fell in love with the sport. He was fascinated by the way Ali danced in the ring, gliding like no heavyweight had before. But Hearns wasn't built like Ali. He was a skinny kid, tall and lanky, with arms that looked like they stretched forever. At first, nobody believed he had the power to make it. His first sparring match was a disaster. He got beaten badly. For most kids, that would have been the end of it. But not for Hearns. The pain didn't push him away. It lit a fire in him. That fire carried him straight to Detroit's legendary Kronk Gym, a place where boxing dreams were forged. And waiting for him, there was Emanuel Stewart, a coach who saw something in Thomas that nobody else did. Stewart didn't just see a tall, skinny kid. He saw a future world champion. He saw a man who could not only fight, but terrify opponents with devastating power. Under Stewart's guidance, Hearns transformed. He went from being labeled a light puncher to becoming one of the hardest hitters in boxing history. By the time he turned pro in 1977, Hearns had already built a staggering amateur record: 155 wins and just 8 losses. That kind of dominance made it clear a new force was about to hit the boxing world. Thomas Hearns' professional debut came in November 1977. His opponent, Jerome Hill, probably thought he was facing a green rookie, but Hearns demolished him in 2 rounds. That wasn't luck. It was the start of something terrifying. What followed was a streak that made the boxing world sit up and pay attention. 17 straight knockouts. One after another, his opponents crumbled before his long reach and thunderous right hand. That's when he earned the nickname that would follow him forever: the Hitman. By 1980, Hearns was ready for his first world title shot. He faced Jose Pipino Cuevas, a respected champion. But Hearns didn't just beat him, he destroyed him, claiming the WBA welterweight championship. Overnight, Thomas Hearns wasn't just a promising fighter. He was a world champion, and one of the most feared men alive. That same year, Ring Magazine and the Boxing Writers Association of America named him Fighter of the Year. The skinny kid from Detroit had arrived at the very top. But boxing is never just about winning belts. It's about proving yourself against the very best. And in 1981, the best meant one man: Sugar Ray Leonard. The fight was billed as the Showdown. 2 undefeated champions, both in their prime, both carrying the hopes of millions of fans. The hype was insane, and when the bell rang, it lived up to every bit of it. Hearns used his reach and jab to dominate the early rounds. He was ahead on the scorecards, outboxing Leonard and landing bombs with that piston-like right hand. It looked like the Hitman was about to cement his place as the king of the welterweights. But Leonard was no ordinary fighter. In the 14th round, with Hearns exhausted from the war, Leonard unleashed a furious combination. The referee stepped in and stopped the fight. Hearns had suffered his first loss. His undefeated record was gone, and his title slipped away in dramatic fashion. For many fighters, that would have been crushing. But Hearns wasn't just any fighter. He took the loss as a lesson, a reminder that talent alone wasn't enough. he would come back stronger. Hearns didn't stay at welterweight for long. He moved up to light middleweight, and in 1982, he beat Wilfred Benitez to claim the WBC light middleweight title. But his most famous moment at that weight came 2 years later. The opponent? Roberto Duran. Duran was already a living legend. Known as Hands of Stone, Duran had never been knocked out in his entire career. He was fearless, relentless, and one of the toughest men to ever step into the ring. But Hearns wasn't intimidated. In fact, he made a bold prediction. "I'll knock him out in the second round." People laughed. Nobody knocked out Roberto Duran. But Hearns wasn't joking. From the opening bell, Hearns unleashed hell. He floored Duran multiple times in the first round, something nobody had ever seen. And in the second, Hearns landed a crushing right hand that ended the fight, just like he said he would. It was one of the most shocking knockouts in boxing history. Hearns didn't just beat a legend, he erased him. That performance earned him another Fighter of the Year award in 1984, but there was still one mountain left to climb. One man who stood at the top of the middleweight division. The undisputed king, Marvin "Marvelous" Hagler. On April 15, 1985, Hearns and Hagler stepped into the ring in what became known simply as the War. From the opening bell, it was chaos. Hearns landed huge right hands, shots that would have ended almost anyone else. But Hagler just kept coming, eating punches and firing back with even more. The first round alone is still considered one of the greatest in boxing history. It was pure violence, two men trading bombs in the center of the ring. By the third round, Hearns had given everything he had. Exhausted and cut, he couldn't withstand Hagler's relentless assault. A furious barrage sent Hearns crashing down, and the referee stopped the fight. Hearns would later admit, "I hit him so hard in the first round, I thought no one could take it. But he just kept coming. I was spent." For Hearns, Marvin Hagler was the one opponent who truly broke him, not physically, but mentally. Hagler's chin, his will, his relentlessness, it was unlike anything Hearns had ever faced. Even though he lost, the fight became legendary. The War is still remembered as one of the greatest fights of all time, and it proved something important about Hearns. He wasn't just a knockout artist, he was a warrior willing to go through hell to prove himself. Thomas Hearns may have fallen to Marvin Hagler in one of the greatest fights ever, but defeat didn't define him. If anything, it pushed him to prove that his career was about more than one legendary war. And in the years that followed, Hearns would go on to do something nobody else had ever achieved in the history of boxing. After Hagler, many expected Hearns to fade. Losing in such brutal fashion, with the entire world watching, could have broken his spirit. But Hearns wasn't built to quit. He kept fighting, and in 1987, he made history. That year, Hearns defeated Dennis Andries to claim the WBC light heavyweight title. Then, just a few months later, he dropped down in weight and beat Juan Roldan for the WBC middleweight title. Overnight, Hearns became the first fighter in history to win world titles in 4 different weight divisions. And he wasn't done yet. In 1988, Hearns picked up the WBO super middleweight title against James Kinchin. Then, in 1991, he moved back up to claim the WBA light heavyweight title by beating Virgil Hill. By the end of his career, Hearns had done something nobody thought was possible. He became the first boxer ever to win world championships in 5 different weight classes. From welterweight to cruiserweight, Hearns proved he was a force across divisions, a man who could carry his power no matter how heavy he got. Of course, there was still unfinished business. Fans around the world wanted to see him and Sugar Ray Leonard clash one more time. That moment came in 1989, 8 years after their first legendary fight. This time, the stakes were the WBC super middleweight title. And just like before, it was a war. Hearns fought brilliantly, flooring Leonard twice during the fight. But when the final bell rang, the judges called it a draw. To this day, many fans believe Hearns was robbed of the victory. Even Leonard himself admitted later that Hearns had probably done enough to win. But officially, Hearns was left without the closure he deserved. What made Thomas Hearns so terrifying wasn't just his punching power, though that was legendary. At 6'1", with an 84-inch reach, he fought like a heavyweight trapped in a welterweight's body. His jab was like a steel rod, his right hand was a wrecking ball, and his timing was deadly. But what really set him apart was his unorthodox stance. He often fought with his left hand dangling low, baiting his opponent into attacking. And when they stepped in, the right hand came like lightning, ending fights in an instant. Hearns didn't need to overwhelm opponents with volume. He picked them apart, broke them down, and then finished them with precision. That's why so many legends feared him, and why he's still ranked among the hardest punchers in boxing history. Like so many great fighters, Hearns stayed in the sport longer than he should have. In the 1990s, he continued to rack up wins, but the miles on his body began to show. In 1999, he moved up again, this time to cruiserweight, and beat Nate Miller for the IBO cruiserweight title. But as the years went on, his speed slowed, his reflexes dulled, and the punishment he'd taken throughout his career began to catch up with him. His final fight came in 2006, when at 47 years old, he scored a TKO win over Shannon Landberg. It was a quiet ending to one of boxing's loudest careers. By the time Hearns walked away, his record stood at 61 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. With an astonishing 48 knockouts, he fought all the greats of his era: Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler, and many more. He collected belts, knocked out legends, and gave fans unforgettable nights. But boxing always demands a price. In retirement, fans began to notice something about Hearns. His speech had slowed. His words were sometimes slurred. He developed noticeable difficulty talking, a condition many experts believe is dementia pugilistica, also known as punch-drunk syndrome. It's a heartbreaking reminder of what happens when you spend decades taking punches to the head. And while Hearns still appears at boxing events, his health battles are visible. In recent years, he's also undergone hip replacement surgery, working through therapy just to keep his mobility. Even after everything, Hearns never held bitterness toward his fiercest rival, Marvin Hagler. In fact, he often called Hagler the toughest man he ever fought. And when Hagler tragically passed away in 2021, Hearns was one of the first to pay tribute. At the official celebration of Marvelous Marvin Hagler Day, Hearns stood among other boxing greats, honoring the man who broke him, but also defined him. It was a moment of respect between two warriors who shared the ring in one of boxing's greatest battles. At 66 years old, Thomas Hearns lives a quiet life away from the spotlight. He still makes appearances, attends events, and supports charities like the Ring of Brotherhood Foundation and Virtual Fights Unlimited. But unlike other legends such as Mike Tyson, who stayed in the public eye through movies and podcasts, Hearns has mostly faded into the background. He lives comfortably, thanks to the millions he earned in his career. His net worth today is estimated around $40 million. He owns a home in Detroit and enjoys time with his family. But the roar of the crowd, the lights, the thrill of fight night, those days are gone. And for a man who once defined an era, that silence is bittersweet. And that's the real tragedy of Thomas Hearns. He was the first man to win world titles in 5 divisions. He knocked out Roberto Duran, went toe-to-toe with Hagler, and gave Sugar Ray Leonard all he could handle. His resume stacks up with anyone's. But when fans today list the all-time greats, Ali, Tyson, Mayweather, Pacquiao, Hearns' name is often missing. He's remembered by diehards, but forgotten by the casuals, overshadowed by the personalities around him, even though his achievements were just as great. Hearns himself has admitted the lack of recognition stings. He once said that despite everything he accomplished, he never felt he truly got the love he deserved, especially from fans in Britain and the US. That loneliness, the kind only legends know, is perhaps his toughest opponent now. But make no mistake, History remembers. Real boxing fans know. Thomas Hearns was a once-in-a-lifetime fighter. He changed the sport, electrified arenas, and gave us moments we'll never forget. From Detroit's Kronk Gym to the Hall of Fame, the Hitman story is one of power, resilience, and legacy. Even if the world forgets, his name is carved in the history of boxing forever. So, was Thomas Hearns truly underrated? Should he be mentioned more often alongside names like Tyson and Ali? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the legends of combat sports.